Hi everyone, Nicholas Buffidis here from the Junior Senior School here in sunny Cyprus, back with another video tutorial, and this one's mainly focused at anybody who uses Microsoft Teams meetings and shares content with their students or their viewers. So whether it's an online lesson or a business meeting, this tutorial is for you. The main purpose of this video tutorial is to basically show you how to share the content while keeping your viewers in mind. What many people don't understand is there are different ways that you can share the content through a Microsoft Teams meeting, and each one has its advantages and disadvantages. And sometimes when we're actually sharing something, what we see on our screen as the presenters is something different, or sometimes what we see is not what the viewers see. So you may be talking about something which you can see on your screen, but the viewers don't actually see that. Viewers are using different size devices like mobile phones, tablets, laptops, PCs. Again, these screen sizes will affect the viewing experience, and if you've got a lot of text material, let's say, it's very hard to read that text on the viewer's point of view if you're using a mobile phone. So this tutorial is going to help you plan ahead and decide which method to use when you are going to share your next content in a meeting. Okay, so let's begin. Now, I'm going to have two viewing areas. So I've got a presenter mode set up and a student account set up in this meeting. So this is what the teacher or the presenter mode looks like. I've actually adjusted my display settings a bit so they look a little bit larger. And I'm going to be discussing this in a second. And this is going to be the student view. So whenever I'm using this screen here, this is actually the student view. It's based in this simulated laptop here. Now again, I'm using a laptop style version. Again, a laptop is a big screen, so the normal circumstances should be a pretty reasonable viewing experience, but you'll understand why I'm using this type of screen and what it is we're going to be doing with the different zoom effects and the display settings, and you'll be able to visualize them easier in the tutorial if I use a slightly bigger screen. Okay, so let's begin. So this is the presenter view, or the teacher's view. Teams has changed the interface a little bit. So if we have a look, we're all very familiar with the share content button here, the little up arrow. And if I click on this, you see that the way it actually works now is slightly different. You get this window here on the right, whereas before we used to get everything down there at the bottom. Okay, now let's have a look at the different options. The first one that we're going to see is screen. Now this actually displays, this screen has actually replaced the desktop. I've got 4 monitors set up right now. My setup here is 4 monitors, and this is why you see 4 screens under this section here, screen. Okay, so essentially choosing one of these will be like sharing your desktop. Which desktop? Well, it depends on which screen you choose. So since I've got 4 screens, I've got 4 desktops, and I can choose any one of these 4 to actually send through. So that's the desktop version. I'll just explain these quickly and then we'll actually demonstrate them. Window. Now here it says window and it's got 11. Now if I click on this, this is going to show me all the windows, all the applications I've currently got open. So if you look at my taskbar, I've got a number of applications open. I've got things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and some other applications I'm using for creating this video. And you can see all of these here, and you can choose any one of these to share. So if I share a window, it will only share that window and nothing else. And we're going to see the advantage of that in a second. If I go back now, we've then got the Microsoft Whiteboard. This is a fantastic tool. If you've got the opportunity to use inking in your lessons, if you're teaching, I always say, use inking. Students actually relate much better when you're live demonstrating or live inking and annotating and highlighting things on your content, rather than having it pre-recorded or just something which is automatic. And we'll look at the whiteboard as well in a minute. And then the last options that you've got here is basically to open the PowerPoint file within Teams, and this gives other options which we'll have a look at towards the end of the video. Okay, and then the last one up here, we've got the include computer sound. Before it used to be system audio, if I remember correctly. Now it's called include the computer sound. So if you're going to be sharing, if you want any audio to pass through your content sharing like videos or audio, then you want to make sure you click this to enable that. I'm actually using my sound card for the recording right now, so I can't do that right now. But you do actually want to enable that if you want to send any audio through. Okay, so I'm going to start off by showing you how to share a desktop first, and how you can make the sharing of the desktop a slightly better experience. So I'm going to be using my desktop, this desktop here, basically this monitor. This monitor here, I've got all of my material being shared. I'll just show you that screen. It's this screen here, and I've got all of the material I'm going to be using, like PowerPoint, Excel, Word, and things like this, everything open on this monitor here. So I'm going to be sharing that desktop. So to do that, I'm going to choose the desktop or the screen which I want to share. That's what the student sees. Okay, so anything that I do on this desktop here will be seen by the student. So everything that I do now on this screen will be visible. If I restore this window, the student will see it. If I'm working on anything else, let's say some Excel worksheets or doing absolutely anything, the student can see this. Now, this is quite useful if you are going to be using different applications. You're going to be switching from, let's say, web pages and then content material in PowerPoint. Using the desktop is actually very useful for that. Where the disadvantage comes in is if you do get any notifications, chat messages from Teams, an email notification from your boss or something which is confidential, that's going to pop up down here, right down here at the bottom, in the bottom right corner where your clock is, and everybody's going to see that. Okay, so you either want to make sure you turn off all your notifications, because the last thing you want is sensitive information or sensitive data being seen by your viewers or your students. Now, where is the other problem? I'm going to show you here a very easy way so you can zoom in and out. If you've got a lot of text, and let's say you're using Word, or most applications work with this, if you hold the control button on your keyboard and then move the wheel on the mouse, you can actually, while I'm holding the control button, I can actually zoom this in and out and get this to use the whole size. And that gives the student a much better experience, or your viewers a much better experience, because the text is much easier to read. So even on a mobile phone, that will be easier to read. What doesn't happen, however, is if, let's say, you're teaching Microsoft Word, or let's say you're a music teacher, you've got some kind of music software you want to teach your students, or you just want to teach an application. What doesn't happen when you zoom in and out is this. The menu bar, can you see the ribbons at the top here, the menus? They're very small. And even here where I'm simulating a laptop, it's still quite small. So how do we get these menus a little bit bigger? And I'll show you the first method. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch back very quickly to my presenter mode here. Okay, and this is where I am. I'm just going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to right click on my desktop. I'm going to go to display settings. Let me just bring that up. Now you can see here, because I've got 4 monitors, you can see the configuration of my 4 monitors. You need to choose the monitor which you are going to be sharing the desktop. So I'm using this monitor here, number 4, and that's the monitor which I'm sharing the desktop. Okay, and that's where I've got all my applications open. So I'm going to select this monitor. If you've only got one monitor, you'll only see one here. That's not an issue. If you've got more than one monitor, then you really want to choose which one you're going to be adjusting. I'm going to go down to here where it says scale and layout, and you can see we've got the percentage here. And I'm going to change that to, let's say, the recommended 150. And I'm going to go to the student area. There we go. This is what the students. And can you see now that menu is much, much better. It's much bigger. It's much clearer. Now, while I've got the student view open here, now because everything's got bigger, you can see the text is bigger, but that's not a problem. I can use the control button, press that down, and move the scroll on my mouse and just adjust that, and that's just a much better viewing experience. I'm going to change my settings from here. I'm going to change this to 175, but I'm going to do that while you're actually seeing what the student view, or there you go, the viewer's view here. And I'm going to change that now. Just have a look and see how the ribbon at the top is going to change. There we go, 175 now. You see, that's just even bigger, and that's really, really cool, because that just makes it so much easier to teach this. I can simply click on, let me come over here. If I click on the menus at the top, they will actually pop up, and they're really big as well. Whereas if I was on my smaller scale, which was 100%, there we go. You see, that's really small. If I'm trying to look at talk about this dialog box here, that's really, really small. It's very hard for people to see. So I'm just going to click on cancel on that one. And let me just show you also now in Excel, same thing. Okay, now I'm not going into PowerPoint too much, because if you're designing PowerPoint the way it should be designed, your PowerPoints, then already you've got large text, a small amount of text on each slide, and irrespective of what view you've got, it should be visible. And as I said, we're going to talk about PowerPoint towards the end. Okay, so again, with Excel, you can see if I go to the top up here where I've got my ribbon, that actually looks quite small. If I change that now from my display settings, I'm going to go to, let's say, 175. There we go. Now if I go now and see my ribbon, look at that. There we go. Come on, there we go. Look how easy it is to see that information there. I'm just going to pin that ribbon there so it doesn't keep vanishing. Okay, so it just makes everything easier. And again, in Excel and in most applications, using the control button, there are many ways to zoom in and out. You can use the Windows button and the plus sign. I personally prefer the control and the wheel mouse, because I can really easily zoom in and out really quite easily like this. Okay, and just adjust it. Okay, so that's the first one. I think that's pretty clear. PowerPoint, again, I mean, I've just opened that up, but you can see PowerPoint should be designed with very little text. This is just the one I do on online safety for younger children. Okay, so irrespective of how small it is or how big it should be visible. You don't really need to mess around with the display settings. Now, the downside is, if we look at the screen that I would normally be working on, this is the screen which I'm using to share the desktop, I've got less working space now. But that's something I don't mind sacrificing for the sake of my viewers to be able, my students, to be able to see clearly what I'm talking about. Okay, so really the downside of sharing your desktop is essentially any pop-ups or notifications that pop up. And the other thing is, if you've only got one screen and you want to do some work, let's say you've opened the PowerPoint and you've given your students some work to do, you've got some problems that you're showing them there, you can't do anything else with your device, because if you try to move, let's say, to your spreadsheet to do your finances, or to your email to write an email, your students are going to see that, okay, because you're actually sharing the desktop. If you've got one screen, this is not a good option if you want to do some other work as well. You've turned all your notifications off, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so let's go look now at the different options. So I'm going to go back to my presenter mode version. So I'm just going to stop sharing there. And at the same time, I'm going to change my display settings for this monitor number 4. I'm going to put that down to 100% again. So our next step is, let's share a window. Now, sharing a window is quite useful, very, very useful. If you want to be working on something else and you want the students just to be looking at, let's say, your PowerPoint, your presentation, your Word, your PDF, whatever it is, you can go anywhere you want, do anything you like on your computer, and the students will only see what it is that you're sharing, that particular window. You won't be able to move away from this. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so we're going to click on our Share Content button here. We're going to go down to the Windows section, and here we can see all the application windows I have open on my system right now. So if I choose, for example, this Word document, we'll just go have a look at the student's view, see what that looks like. There we go. Okay, so the student will see now this window. Now, same issues as before, that I can, from my window that I'm working on with Word, if I use the control button on the keyboard, hold that press to move the wheel backwards and forwards, that zooms in and out. And yes, we've got the same issue. The menu at the top does not zoom in and out. And we can resolve that again, just show that very quickly by going to our desktop, right click, display settings. If I just change that for screen number 4 and change that to 175. And now if we go back, we can see it actually looks a little better. So there's not much difference. Now I'm going to use the control and the wheel again to zoom that out. So this is very similar to sharing your desktop. We haven't really done anything special, but what's different now is this. What is being shared, and if you notice, you can't actually see that here. Let me just restore this window. So if I bring this window down a bit, can you see this window's got a red line around it? That's the window that's being shared and being sent to all the viewers. Okay, that's the content being shared. So whatever's inside this red window. So right now that I restored the size of this window, so it's smaller than my entire screen, the only thing that the viewers can see is what's inside this red square. So if we have a look, there we go. We don't see any of the Excel in the background. So this allows you to be able to work on other things. For example, if I'm now working on Excel, so Excel is active on the screen. If I go to the student view, the student sees only Word. Okay, so this allows you to be working on other things, sending emails. Even if you get pop-ups, notifications, these will not display because they're not part of that window. Okay, but this causes other issues. But before we get into them, let me show you some other things you can do when you're sharing a window instead of sharing the desktop. So I'm going to just change that back to 100%. So you can see now I've changed my display settings to 100. Again, I'm going to zoom in. Now, what I want to show you is this. The difference now, because you're sharing the window, right now to the viewer's devices or the student devices, that whole window is being sent to their device. So if they've got a laptop or a computer, PC or big screen, their screen will take that whole red perimeter window and display the whole size of that window. Look what happens if I change the size of that screen. So if I do this, restore my window to, let's say, half the size of the screen, because this is whatever's inside this red box, this red outline, is going to be shared with all your students or your viewers. That red outline box is going to take up the whole size of their display, which basically means, if we look at the students now, everything looks bigger. Okay, so if I now over here, I change the size of this window, just make it even smaller, you can see on the student end, when I let go, everything just got bigger. So I'm actually zooming in and out by changing the window size, because the size of that window is going to be stretched out to the maximum on the viewer's device. So that's one way you can actually zoom the menu in as well. You can only do this when you're sharing the window. So what's the disadvantage? Well, let's try. It's a bit easier to display this with Excel. So I'm just going to stop sharing. So I'm going to stop sharing this. Let's go to Teams and stop sharing that. And I'm going to share my Excel window now. And I'm going to find Excel. That's going to be part of my window. So I'm going to click on Window. These are all my application windows. There's my Excel file. I'm going to click on that. And that's going to display for the students. So if we go to the student view now, there it is there. And just like before, you can see everything is small because Excel is taking the whole size of the window. And just like with Word, if I was to restore the size of this, you can actually see this happening from here. If I restore the size of this, you can just see that everything automatically gets bigger. And as I change the size of my window and make it smaller, everything gets bigger. So if you want to have a look and see what it looks like on my end, I'm actually using only a small portion of my window size because I've restored it. Making this window bigger, this red box, will actually make everything smaller for the student. So that's one easy way of zooming in and zooming out and having those menus look much easier and clearer for your students. So where's the downside to this? Well, we said the upside is notifications will not be seen. Any like email notifications, chat notifications, all of that will not be seen. But you do have this disadvantage. If I want to now display to the students how to do the page setup, for example, I'll go to File. I'm going to go to Print. And I want to just change the page setup down here. Now, because the page setup opens up in another window dialog box, I'm talking about this dialog box right now. I'm talking about the margins, the footers, the sheet, the head. But you have no idea what I'm talking about. Because what I see is this. I can see this dialog box, but the students cannot. And the reason why is because this dialog box is not part of this window which is framed in that red line. Okay, so you need to be careful. You need to practice these things before you actually present to your viewers and make sure what you see is what they see. There are other features as well in other applications. I'll show you another one in Excel which really doesn't work. So if I go to the student view, and I'm just going to restore the size of my window so that you can see just a little bit better, make that easier for you. Okay, so I'm actually practicing what I'm preaching here. So if I want to type a function here, I'm going to use the if function. I'm going to type equals if. I'm going to open up the brackets, and you can see on my screen, or on your screen, or on the students, they don't see the help at the bottom. On my screen, however, if you see my screen, you can see that help pop up down here, and it actually shows the parameters required for the if function. Students don't see that. That will not be displayed. Okay, so that's another issue which happens when you're actually sharing the window. So you need to basically trial run these things before you actually present them to your students. Okay, so there are a couple of things that I've showed you. I'm now going to stop that and show you a few things on PowerPoint as well. Okay, so let's go find our PowerPoint presentation. And the first method I'm going to show you is going to be through the desktop share. So I'm going to choose the monitor which I'm going to be sharing. And that's the monitor that's going to be actually displaying my PowerPoint. So I'm going to choose that monitor there. So here's my PowerPoint. And this is basically right now what is being displayed on the student end. You can see that there because I'm sharing the desktop. Now then, if you've got more than one monitor, that's absolutely great. You can actually set up PowerPoint to open up the presentation on a separate monitor, and that will allow you to be have your presentation on one monitor, which the students are going to be seeing because that's the monitor that you share in the desktop, and you could be working on other things on another monitor. Now, if you don't have more than one monitor, that's fine. You can just use the window version. We're going to look at that in a minute. But if you do have more than one monitor, you want to choose the monitor that you're going to be working on. I'm going to show you now, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just change my display settings. So I'm going to practice what I preach here so that you can see this a bit more clearly. I'm just going to change that to, let's say, 150%. There we go. There you should be able to see that a bit more clearly now as well. Okay, so you can see up here, if I go to my slideshow menu in the ribbon, because I've got more than one monitor, I can choose which monitor I'm going to use to open the presentation when I actually run the presentation. If you put it on automatic, it will decide on its own which one's a primary monitor or which one's a secondary monitor. I want it to open up in the same monitor which I've got this presentation here. So that's that monitor there. Now, when I actually run my slideshow now, so I can actually go from the beginning, there you go. And if we have a look, the students actually see that there. Okay. Now, if I go to my end, what I see as the presenter, what I'm actually sharing, if I stop sharing now and then go to share again, because I've actually opened my presentation, I've actually got two windows now. I've got the window which is my PowerPoint in edit mode, let's say, and I've got my presentation. So if I choose presentation, so it's always good if you want to show the presentation, start the presentation first before you actually share the content. That will make basically the presentation available in the windows. So I'm going to choose this one here. That has now chosen my presentation. The students can see the presentation. And now I'm able to go away from here, go to my Excel, my email. I can do whatever it is I like. So if we go to my monitor here, this is what I'm sharing. I can use my Alt and Tab just to break away from there and go to my go to my Excel file. There we go. Okay, so I'm in my Excel file now. I'm working away, but what the students actually see is still my presentation. Okay, so that allows me to do anything I want, and the students can be working. So if I've got some questions on there, I've got some problems or some instructions for them to research or whatever, I can do some other things while they're working. Of course, they can ask me questions if they need help. Okay, and of course, if I go back to my presentation, I can carry on, and I've got the ability to do my inking, which is, I always suggest use inking, live inking, and annotations and highlighting when you're actually delivering a lesson or presentation. makes much more sense, and students are more engaged with that. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to open up the presentation in Teams. Now, the difference with this method is that the PowerPoint presentation opens up within Teams for each one of your viewers. Okay, so what you do in your Teams is not necessarily what is seen sometimes from the viewers. Let's have a look and see what I mean by that. So I'm going to open up now my PowerPoint Live. Okay, now this actually opens up the PowerPoint in my Teams window. It's not opening up on my other monitor here where I've got my material ready, which I'm going to be sharing either a window or a desktop. This is actually in my window. And what happens on the student end, they see this. There's the presentation. And on my end, I get the presenter view here. Okay. Now, let's have a look at some of these nice features that have been added. First of all, you've got the grid view, which is down here. And if I click on that, I can choose. Now, students don't see that. You can see while working here, the students are still stuck on that first slide there. So I can choose which slide I want to jump to very quickly. I'm just going to click on this one here. Okay. And that's going to jump to there, and automatically the students are going to see that as well. So that's a nice way. The grid view is a nice way to jump around from slide to slide. If you don't want to have the presenter view, well, you can hide that presenter view. You get rid of that. You've got inking, but here's the problem. I can be inking on this here. Okay. The students don't see that. Okay, so you lose the ability of inking. That's a downside for me. And there are some other features as well. For example, if I translate this, you've got here as well, translate slides. So I want to translate this to Greek, for example. It's the only other language I know, so it will translate it for me to Greek, which is pretty good. Okay, maybe the font, the size is mixed up a bit, but the students don't see that. Okay, so some of these features for me are a little bit iffy. So I'm just going to translate that back, original. Now, what you do have though is the ability. So if you do have some students, if you've got PowerPoint slides which have got some descriptions, some problems, some questions and things for students to work on, the one good thing that you can do with this is if you do have students that work on their own pace, if some students are slower, some students are faster, and you have questions and problems and say research scenarios that you've got in your PowerPoint slides, you can allow the students to work at their own pace. So if we look at the students section here, when you go down here, you can see the students here get this slide from to, and they have the ability to move the slides forward. So if they have problems, they can go to the next problem, carry on. And if we look and see where let's say I'm the student, I'm moving ahead, I'm on this one here, okay, the givemeyourmoney.com site. As the presenter, I'm still on this slide here. Now, this could be a bad thing. Maybe we don't want students moving ahead. Maybe the second slide is solutions to problems. So if you want to disable this feature, you've got this up here, prevent participants from moving through the shared presentation on their own. So if I click on that, you're going to get a cross through that. There you go. And now if we look at the student area, you see they don't have those left and right arrows anymore. They cannot scroll through. They've actually been told here that share a disabled private viewing. Okay, so I can dismiss that. So that's the one good thing about sharing the PowerPoint presentation. And the other good thing is that you can actually give control of the presentation to someone else to pass through. If you even make them instead of an attendee, you change them into a presenter. They can actually take control. Okay, so if they take control, what I did there was I simply went on this student here and changed him from an attendee to a presenter, and that basically enabled some settings here, and they can actually take control automatically. Okay, so if you've got some student presentations and they've sent them to you and you're actually running them, you can allow the student to take control of their presentation without that student having to load the presentation and present it and share it with everyone. Okay, to sum things up, essentially, you've got certain methods which you can use to share content. One is the desktop. The advantage is that you can flip through different applications, different windows very, very easily. But the disadvantage is notifications will pop up unless you've disabled them. And there is always a risk of some sensitive information being displayed to people that shouldn't actually see that. The next method is you can share your window. That actually makes just that window visible, but there is a downside to that. Maybe some menus that pop out in different windows or some help features that pop up are not actually seen by the users. Make sure to zoom, try and use the maximum area possible. Adjust the display settings so that although you might get less of a workspace, you're actually keeping your viewers in mind and just knowing that they may have like mobile devices, so the area that you want to be viewed is more viewable to them. If you're going to use the window share content and you're going to share the window, remember, by adjusting the size of that window and making it smaller actually makes everything bigger, so you can actually focus in on the area that you really want them to see. The whiteboard is something I haven't shown, and I can show you that very quickly, but I'm not going to demonstrate it. I'm just going to show you how to enable that. So if I just go to share and I click on whiteboard, you should all know that it actually gives you the option for you to just do inking on the whiteboard and all the viewers. So there's the whiteboard, and this is what the student will see. And then you've got the ability when you start that to either use the whiteboard for collaboration. That means that the students can also use the whiteboard, or you can just use it to present. Personally, if I'm using PowerPoint, I just use a blank slide as a whiteboard. There's no need to switch apps. And the last thing is, if you're going to be using opening PowerPoint as within Teams, you do actually lose the inking ability, which I don't like. And some of the things that you do, you actually may think that your students or your viewers can see, they don't actually see. The good thing is you can pass over control very easily to someone else. And the other good thing is about doing that, you can actually allow students to move at their own pace. Okay, so if you like this video, make sure you like. If you learned something new, you want to follow up on new videos, make sure to subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.